All right, let's talk about acupuncture. If you're an athlete, you've probably heard it can be a game changer for recovery and performance. But let's be real, there is one single question that stops most of us from ever even giving it a shot.
Yeah, this is the big one. Do they hurt? I mean, for most of us, the only thing we can compare it to is getting a shot at the doctor's office or having blood drawn, right? You know, that sharp little pinch, that feeling that makes you wince. And so, of course, we imagine that's what acupuncture feels like. But is that what's really happening?
Okay, let's dive into this, because there is a massive gap between that fear and what the science says actually happens. And we're not just going to go off of what some people say. We're going to break this down with some serious, hard data from actual research. So, first up, a study tracked patients over more than 1,300 individual acupuncture sessions. When they were asked to rate any pain on a scale from 0 to 10, what do you think the average was? Just 1.3. I mean, for most people, that's barely even a blip on the radar. It's practically nothing.
Okay, but maybe that was just one study, right? Well, let's zoom out, way out. This number comes from a huge analysis covering over 7 million treatments. And it found that a whopping 87% of patients feel either minimal pain or, get this, absolutely no pain at all. This isn't a small sample size, this is the overwhelming reality.
And honestly, this one right here is the most shocking stat to me. Another detailed study found that on a person's very first treatment, the time you'd expect to be the most nervous and anxious, over half of them, 57.7%, reported zero pain. None. The data couldn't be clearer. The fear and the reality are just worlds apart. So that leads to the big question. Why? Right? Why is there such a huge disconnect? Well, the answer starts with something really simple: the physics and the actual engineering of the needle itself. Because the needle you have in your head right now, it's completely wrong. So check this out. A typical acupuncture needle is about 0.20 millimeters thick. Now, compare that to a needle for a blood draw, which is closer to 0.8 millimeters. That means the acupuncture needle is 4 times thinner. In fact, they're so fine, you could fit a whole bunch of them inside the tip of a single hollow medical needle. But here's the real game changer. It's not just about the size, it's the design. Those medical needles, they're hollow with a sharp angled edge that's literally designed to cut a path through your tissue. But acupuncture needles are solid with a smooth cone-shaped tip. They don't cut anything. They gently separate and glide between the tissue fibers, kind of like weaving a thread through the fabric of a shirt. But it's not just about the needle's physics. The really cool part, the real magic, is in how your brain and your nervous system process the whole sensation. Think about it this way. When you feel a sharp, burning pain, that signal travels along these slow-moving nerve fibers called C fibers. But acupuncture, it primarily triggers the faster nerve fibers, the ones that send messages about touch, pressure, and where your body is in space. From the very start, you're sending signals on a completely different non-pain pathway. And this perfectly explains something called the gate control theory of pain. Basically, those fast signals from touch and pressure get to your spinal cord first, and they slam the gate shut. This literally blocks the slower pain signals from ever making it up to your brain. You know how when you bang your elbow, you immediately rub it and it feels better? That's what's happening. You're closing the pain gate. Now, fMRI brain scans show something even more fascinating. When you actually feel pain, it lights up parts of your brain like the amygdala. That's your brain's fear and emotion hub. So pain literally triggers a biological fear response. But look at this. The same studies show that acupuncture does the complete opposite. It actually deactivates and quiets down those exact same areas. It is neurologically creating the opposite of a pain response. So instead of turning on the fear alarm, it's actively turning it off. Okay, so if what you're feeling isn't pain, then what is it? What's the sensation? This is where we get to the very heart of the experience, and it brings us to this really important concept from Eastern medicine called Di-Qi. So, the qi literally translates to the arrival of qi, or energy, but a much better way to think about it is as the therapeutic sensation. It's this unique feeling of heaviness, or maybe a dull ache, or some warmth right around the needle. And most importantly, it's seen as a good sign. It means the body's healing response has been switched on. This slide makes that distinction super clear. The goal, the therapeutic feeling, is the stuff on the left. Heaviness, a dull ache, maybe some warmth or tingling. What you should not be feeling is the stuff on the right, anything sharp, stinging, or burning.
If you feel that, that's just a sign the practitioner needs to make a tiny adjustment.
And this isn't some abstract idea. Research from Harvard actually gives us this incredible biomechanical explanation. Dr. Langevin found that when the needle is gently stimulated, collagen fibers in your tissue wind around it like spaghetti around a fork. That feeling is the qi. You're feeling tissue biomechanics at work, not tissue damage.
So let's bring all this science, the physics, the neurology, the biomechanics, back into the real world. What can you, as an athlete, actually expect when you're on the table?
One of the things that surprises athletes the most is what happens after the needles are in. Instead of lying there all tense and waiting for something bad to happen, their nervous system does a complete 180. It shifts from that fight or flight mode into rest and digest. And this deep state of relaxation is so common, people actually call it the AccuNap. Seriously, a ton of people just fall asleep. This quote from a practitioner just hits the nail on the head. Athletes are tough. You push through torn ligaments, stress fractures, unbelievable pain. And yet the idea of a needle that's as thin as a hair can create so much anxiety. It just goes to show you how powerful our minds are and how what we expect to feel shapes our reality. So we'll just leave you with this final thought. We've seen the data, we've seen the physics, and we've seen the neuroscience. They all point to the same conclusion. The fear of acupuncture is almost always way, way bigger than the actual feeling, which leads to a pretty powerful question for any athlete out there. What if the biggest thing standing in the way of your recovery wasn't the injury itself, but just the anticipation?